The Fat Cats have decided to meet again, and of course we shall always be talking rugby. And as you can see, there's a new quarterback in the seat. I'm back. I decided to chase Ruben. He was talking things about me. And for some reason, Edwin also backed me up. But today I decided to take the bull by the horns and decided to, ride this thing my way. We are back talking rugby in Uganda because there's always one too many things happening, and more often than not, things are quite sad. The reports we get aren't the happiest we want to see, and today we want to know what actually is happening. Are these reports just hearsay, or is there actually cause for these things to be said? As I've said, I'm joined by Ruben Kiumuro, the regular Fat Cat, and Edwin. They stay very close here, so they really have nothing to do right now other than talk rugby. And we're joined by another gentleman in a tell-all kind of episode, who I'll tell you later about. But before we get into that discussion, I would like to remind you that when you're in Chisasi and you're looking for the best accommodation around, best B&B services, awesome Wi-Fi, very fast, leave alone your 20 kilobyte speed. The food is great, the ambience is good. Look no further than the Fred and Winnie B&B. Talking welfare, allow me welcome and introduce Rujjumba Isaac. Isaac, how are you doing?
Good, my brother. How are you?
I want you to be louder than that because what we are going to say today, you may lose your voice later, but not now.
Yeah.
How is Stone City?
Stone City?
Yeah.
Still very stony.
It's still very stony.
As good as ever.
Ruben, you know Stone City?
Yes.
You can say hi to the people who are watching us right now.
Hello. I don't know which camera I should look at, but hello. Yeah. Hey, we're here ready, of course. Candid rugby conversations as always, and let's do it. Let's do this.
Edwin, it's been a week since the last recording. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. As I said to Ernest last time, I'll say to you, I'm going to weigh you after the show. We need to have the race between Degzi and Lekweru.
Yeah.
Then we need to have the weight race matchup between you and
it's actually already
and
on our
Ernest.
social
Yes.
media. Who are you putting your money on? Take a cent or whatever. Are you putting it on Emily Lekuru or are you putting it on Frank?
Team Lekuru. Team Lekuru.
You've been in the Pirates camp before. Who are you putting your money on? Because those are two people from the Pirates camp, Black Pearls and Pirates itself.
That is a very hard question.
Keeping in mind that Frank won the first race, but Emily had a number of excuses. She had training, she pulled a muscle. Yeah, but she's saying, she was not allowed.
If I say something bad about Emily, she'll look at me badly. If I say something bad about
Don't say
Chidega,
anything bad, just put your money
Just say-
somewhere. Yeah.
exactly. If I put my money on Chidega, Emily will look at me badly. If I put my money on Emily, Chidega will look for me during our
a
next
man who
meeting
shakes a lot of tables, you're scared today.
That is a heavy table to
We're
shake.
here to discuss the tables you've broken. So how come you're uncomfortable talking about just Emily versus Chidega?
Emily versus Chidega. I meet Chidega on the pitch, my brother. I love my legs.
short ball, eh?
Okay, now to the serious business and why here today. Rujjumba, there's been there's a table we're having. There's a table we were at last year, 2021. Our drinks were very, very chilled, very well served. The food has been served as well. Before we knew it, you came and slashed the whole thing. Bottles broken. We're like, maybe the guy's just insane or mad, but one work out. Then, as it happened on 16th August, I think it was about 6:30 or 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. You will tell me. Again, we were chilling. This time there was cake, still some cold drinks there. Food was halfway done. For Rujjumba, another table slashed. So we want to know what has been causing you to slash our tables anyhow. We want to start from 2021 when you talked about your unfair dismissal from national team. Why would you call it unfair, and what exactly happened? Because we want in the camp, and people we've tried to speak to about it haven't really. Maybe they don't want to speak for you, or they fear some of the repercussions. So, I want to hear from Isaac Rujjumba what exactly happened during the national team training camp last year that caused you eviction then.
In all honesty, the chronology of events doesn't start from camp. The chronology of events starts from April that year, rather around March, when the budget for the financial year ended in December 2021 was released, and I was very vocal about it. I was told there would be repercussions, and I didn't know the repercussions until I was taken off the national team. The reason I was given for being taken off the national team was because I had used private means, yet we were in a COVID bubble.
Okay. And
So-
you're refuting that.
No, that is the truth. I used private means. We were in a COVID bubble, and the rules said that by virtue of COVID restrictions, to prevent that from getting into the camp, I had to go off the team. But that's not where the unfairness comes from.
Okay.
The unfairness comes from the fact that a day or two prior to that, we'd all been told in camp that henceforth the official means of transportation for anyone and everyone on the team will be the Pioneer bus that they had given us. Anyone and everyone. On that day, I hadn't been feeling good, so I slept. And by the time I woke up, I even missed breakfast. By the time I woke up, the bus had set off. And we were about 7 players who had been left behind with the team doctor and the team manager at the time. So I go and I borrow a motorbike that belongs to the askari of the place we were staying at. And I ride it all the way, bearing in mind that that is a motorbike, accepted means of transportation. I did not carry a single person. I was alone on the motorbike, and I gave the owner money to find the motorbike at Chadondo so he could pick it himself.
So let me get this right before you go very far. Was there allowance for that if you haven't taken the bus, you can use solution A, B, or C?
That hadn't been given to us, but I did not want to miss the session. So I decided I would take the safest means possible without exposing anyone to COVID. So I rode the bike myself, paid the gentleman to find me at Chadondo and pick his bike and ride it back. The team manager rode his bicycle from the hotel to the training grounds. And the other players who had been left behind moved in a private car all the way to the training grounds. So the unfairness doesn't come from me being chased off the team. Those were the rules.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
The unfairness comes from why me, and yet so many other people did the same thing. So many other people did the same thing, and yet you chose to point at me and say, "This is the guy. Let's get him out." Which is why I say it stems from my continued, shall I say, activism against them.
By them you're talking about.
By then I'd already talked about the budget of 2020.
No, I mean when you say activism against them, who is the them we're talking about here?
The people that are in charge of the systems that are keeping us as we are instead of developing as a rugby fraternity.
Okay. Edwin, you have a small background in law. I need your reaction to Rujjumba's introduction on the dismissal from camp last year.
Well, I believe for some particular reasons he can't mention which particular people were in the other car, unless you're willing to do so. But from what he says, it appears that a rule was broken, and when rules are broken, there are consequences, which I think in the situation we were in at the time of COVID, it's quite evident that once someone is in violation of camp protocols, you are asked to step aside. I think we saw it in, I think one of the games, Scotland, even in the Six Nations, if I could borrow that as an example, You noticed, I think there was a game Stuart Hogg and some other 2 players didn't play because they had kind of skipped past the curfew to go and party in Italy or something like that. So they missed the next game. So based on what he has said, I think he's even in agreement that it was one of the things that took him out. But I think the aspect now is why was I crystallized on? Why not the others?
Why him alone?
Why him alone? So it comes down to, I think, something that we're going to address later on. He says he addressed the budget issue and it got some eyes on him. So they were just waiting for you to, put your foot out of the door and then chop it off. So I think that's, I could say, legally, if that's analysis to give.
Ruben, I think it's fair to say that you have a bad boy history, isn't it?
Where these accusations coming from?
Yeah.
Let's say you are in Rujjumba's shoes and you've been saying a few things here and there that probably the Fat Cats team doesn't like, and then you show up to recording later and then you're like, Ruben, it's been nice knowing you. What would your reaction be? Would you go Rujjumba's way?
Putting it in the context of the Fat Cats, of course, definitely for us it's a smaller unit, so it's a definitely different way in which it can be addressed.
You'd find him in a corner, eh?
Not necessarily in a corner, not necessarily in a corner, but there are different ways in which you can diplomatically address it. He's already, I think, been popular for that style of communication, which I think should be encouraged in players. Players should not feel like they should be also cocooned into just cowering and just obeying even when things aren't right. We've had not only one incident, we have had so many incidences where people have complained about not getting there. My biggest pain for players actually is when they get injured playing for the national team or for their respective clubs, and then they seem to be put on the side to deal with their issues. That has always been my challenge with sport. I'm not really a big advocate for, let's say, yes, they need it, like the allowances and all that for facilitation, but medical has always been my big issue. Anyway, but coming back to this, what I would want to understand, I think, from Isaac is when he was not feeling well, did he inform someone? Did he communicate with his team manager? Did he communicate with the coaches? And what course of action did they ask him to go with in that case? Because they could have told you maybe just stay in the hotel. Maybe we'll find a way of compensating. So that is what I want to understand from his introduction.
There are situations where you're put in a corner and you have to make a quick decision. You either miss out on the training, and yet you're in camp. There is no reason for you to miss out on the training. Me deciding to get and pay the owner of the bike so he could find me the other side and also pay for my use of his bike was me trying to show how committed I was. In mind, I figured maybe coach will see me reaching, and they'll be like, this guy is committed. He really wanted to make it, and clearly he has kept within the bounds, because riding alone on a bike, having sanitized it and everything, is within the bounds of, I wouldn't say is escaping the bounds of the bubble, in as much as it's it's out of line with the rules. So I did it as a way of basically showing commitment. You've been left behind. People have gone to train. Better late than never. Rather I'd show up and then explain my situation instead of staying back and then everyone comes back to camp and you're just there seated like you chose not to train. You see how bad that looks. So, no, I did not tell anyone. And wait, actually, in hindsight, as I said, the team manager was also late. I remember having a discussion with him. We didn't talk about me getting a bike or anything. No, we didn't. When he saw that we were all late, I and some other players. He also had to get back to training, so he was rushing. So he just got onto the bike and left. So I decided, let me just get a bike.
Maybe I could ask, did the training, did you actually participate in the training yourself?
Oh yes, I did participate in the training.
Okay, so full contact, you participated, and then you went back in the bus.
I participated in the training, and then thereafter I was called aside towards the end of training by some people up in the stands at Chadondo and told that I have been chased from the national team. The coaches did not know about it. They found out when they saw me leaving the gates.
So the coach had no idea you had been dismissed?
No, he didn't.
So after training, person X calls you at Shadondo?
During training, about we were warming down, person X calls me upstairs in Chadondo and just informs me that, boss, you've been bounced from the national team. Don't even go back to the hotel. Just go home, we shall send you things. Yeah. So I went, I tried going back to the pitch. They told me, don't go back to the pitch. I'm like, okay. So I walked out of Chadondo in my shorts and I did not come with anything to wear on top of my training kit. Walked out, zero money, talked to the TM and told him to get me enough to get me back to my place. He agreed. He gave me a 10,000 Ugandan shillings. And that is how I left the national team in 2021.
This is actually very sad.
Yeah.
And I even don't know how to ask this because I'm so taken aback. But did the coaches have a reaction to you walking out, or you were?
They were perplexed, but when I was looking out back, they were like, "What's up?" Then I just pointed up at Chadondo, and then walked out. I think they were informed shortly after I left. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the saddest point in this is that we have to refer to these people as person X and person Y and why they have so much power that they are going to make that decision instantly, like at a training session.
Without consulting.
Even we have seen the biggest in some of these associations that we aspire to be like, where people actually first sit down and even, let's say, give the person an opportunity to have a hearing and speak. And at least say their side, and then also hear from, maybe after these guys have fully consulted one another, and have a unified decision, and then they say, okay, this is now what we're standing with. Now you can go, but we have heard what you have said, but still it doesn't hold any water. But the fact that that decision is made, like there in that whole space of coming late, training, and then I would have actually totally understood if it had happened like you came late and they're like, okay, you're not going to train. You go.
Yes, no training. Yes,
And that was where the conundrum comes in.
And yet the other people who came late trained.
If it was truly about COVID, would I have been allowed to train?
Exactly.
Wouldn't they have made that decision before I got into training and got into contact with the other players? So definitely it wasn't about COVID and restrictions.
And still on that issue, I want to think that wasn't the only day that some players were late for the bus. Was it?
I can't say for sure, but I don't think it was.
That's a very hard realization to take in. But are you at will to name and shame the person X that someone did to the stands?
It was a group. They were having a meeting there with I think the World Rugby, something like that. Oh, Africa Rugby, Rugby Africa, something
Rugby
like
Africa
that.
observers for the games.
Yeah. Among the people there, let me see. There are some ladies whose names I'm not sure of, and who else was there? Okay. If you find out who was there in the meeting for the Rugby Africa that very day, because they were there organizing a tournament meeting.
Yes.
So they sat and I think they sat and just decided, and said, you know what, Rujjumba, you're off the team.
You say that this was like a culmination of things you had been saying earlier about the budget, And of course, that same question is going to lead us into the part of player welfare and budgets that has been the recent tables you've shaken. But the very first part of how you go to termination, can you take us through the conversations you are trying to open up then?
You see, it beat my understanding at the time that we were coming fresh from COVID. And during the time when teams were supposed to be facilitated, be helped out, during a whole year of no rugby, they managed to dubiously allocate 174 million to TBH Holdings, owned by Peter Magona and a number of other people.
VP commercial.
Yeah. Okay. And another 75 million shillings to Rugby Fan Zone. Yeah. And then that is in total roughly 250 million. In that same breath, they allocated 140 million to all the clubs to run the league, of which 100 was going to the clubs and 40 was going to facilitate the running of the games.
Mm-hmm. Wait, 40 was facilitating running of the games and then 100 to the clubs. So, and what does that mean for the money that went to TBH Holdings and Fan Zone?
It was meant for advertising. But you ask yourself, what form of advertising have you seen in rugby? Have you, a bit of graphics and this and that cannot cost you 175 million or 74 million. You get?
Maybe Edwin has a graphics guy that charges that much.
Look.
Maybe. Yeah.
Edwin, before you interject, yes. Having a little bit of marketing understanding in this and observing how we have been working with Nile Special and also the respective rugby venues, and also having a few conversations with a couple of people, I think that money goes to things like branding the bars, maybe some branding on the stands where the people are seated, and of course, yes, like you said, the artworks, maybe the influencers, maybe paying for photography. But my question is, if we have been allocated, let's say, 300 million as our sponsorship deal, why is your advertising budget on our sponsorship deal? That is what beats my understanding. You're already a brand, a big brand, and you've said you're sponsoring us. Why is there an advertising budget inside? Like, why your budget for your activations is inside the money you've given us? I'm giving you money to help you do something, but off that money, I'm taking off transport. So it doesn't make sense to me.
You see, the way these brands operate is that it's not just enough to give you money and say, I've given you money to do your thing. People need to know who I am. And I think that for me, in my opinion, that's the basic explanation I can give.
Rights to.
Yes, you see, but you see, the thing is,
for that, right?
The thing is, I have KPIs to meet in terms of advertising my brand. You get?
Yeah.
Rugby is a tool I can use day in, day out to come and advertise and, okay, for no other language, at the sweat of the players. You see, the growth of my brand should also grow alongside the game that I'm trying to sponsor. So the aspect of allocation of money is something that the union necessarily has to deal with. But if I'm allocated money to advertise, or if the sponsor himself has said that I have to give this particular money for advertising, that is part of the budget. And I think it comes down to aspects of negotiation.
Yeah.
So it's not one of those things you can look at and say that, you know what, for argument's sake, you could say that they are bad negotiators.
Yeah,
that's true.
If you could say they are bad negotiators, because why would you say, as you said, that more than half is going for advertising? But for me, if I put on a hat of a brand guy, I'll tell you that, yes, I'm going to advertise, I'm going to give you money, but my brand should be very visible. So let the stands have Nile Special, pay all the paint guys. We use my own painting guy, not your paint guy. I have my own graphics guy. I have my own photographer guy, because I need my brand out there. I need these influencers to push my hashtags and promote the game. Whether it comes, and please forgive me, whether it comes at the sweat of the players, that's another issue to deal with, because the union is primarily responsible for welfare of all players and the clubs that pay allegiance to the union.
Yeah.
That is the union's issue. It is not a sponsor's issue for me, if it were me. If I sit as a sponsor and I tell you, I'm giving you 100 million, I want to spend this money, you could argue and say, no, but can we meet halfway and say maybe some money is pulled from another budget in your company to advertise as opposed for something else? So it comes down to that. When me as a sponsor, if I say my advertising money is part of your sponsorship, it is up to you to allocate how to deal with such resources.
It's interesting. You should talk about player welfare and poor negotiations done by the union, because that's Rujjumba's latest, I want to call it blockbuster.
Fresh off the chart, eh?
Fresh off the chart.
Trending on Spotify.
Number one.
By the way, before even going, have you ever thought of having a podcast?
A podcast.
Also, I want to say you're a brilliant writer, but I also think that having interacted with you quite a number of times, I think you're a good speaker, a good orator. You should think about it. You should maybe hire our equipment out.
Right?
Small plug.
I saw where this was going.
For those that don't know, you can hire the podcast media equipment for all your podcasts. But aside from the shameless plug, yeah, you should think about it. You should really think about it.
Ruben is so shameless. In my podcast, advertising is thing. This is interesting. But Isaac, player welfare. There's a very awesome piece that you wrote, and I believe in about an hour, it had very, very incredible traffic on it. People were raising questions. Why aren't players doing this? Why aren't more people talking about this? Why aren't we getting these guys out? Now I want to hear your story. What broke the camel's back? What was the last straw for you to pen this down? Because it was quite long, and it was felt like something had broken in you to make you pen this whole writing.
I want to first reply to something said. You see, when it comes to the budget, and 250 million is allocated to advertising, whereas 140 in total is allocated to 10 clubs that are going to do what is needed to advertise.
The biggest stakeholders.
You get the biggest stakeholders. It shows that there is a lack of prioritizing. They do not know how to prioritize.
We are measuring in minor issues.
Exactly. Grow the sport, and as the sport grows, the advertisement will be automatic. Now, as per player welfare, you see, even the first piece I wrote was still about player welfare.
Yes, it was.
These players, these are the actual stakeholders. There's nothing like club owners or these, although those are also stakeholders, but the people without whom the sport cannot run are the actual stakeholders. So they should really be a priority. Someone said to me yesterday that, you see, in the Premiership, a person in charge of maybe a worker in the Premier League will earn his salary of 800,000 and will sign off checks for Cristiano to be paid his millions of USD. But he knows that Cristiano being paid these millions is the reason as to why he's going to get his 800,000. You get? So if they are to cater for the players, if they are to put the players' needs before their own needs, then trust me, rugby will grow to a point whereby they're even comfortable with bigger salaries, with bigger money than the one they're failing to account for. Player welfare is what keeps the players in the game. You can't expect players to take care of every single thing, from their own travel allowances, to their own surgeries, to their own, and these are high costs. Rugby is not as cheap a sport as football. Rugby is like probably the most expensive sport to maintain yourself on. First of all, you've got to eat more than a footballer. You've got to train as hard as possible. You've got to put in time in the gym. The gym is not free. On top of all that, you've got to move, transportation, left, right, center, going for training here, going to the gym there. And then at the end of the game day, give you beer and bidi.
6 beers.
6 beer. That's for the man of the match, my brother. Ask normal people, it's 2.
6 beers, please. You know how you have to play to get 6 beers. Don't play around.
So the question comes in, what is the priority? You want us to forget our problems? You want us to forget them on beer, or you get? So that was a question I was raising, and no accusations per se, but merely raising questions. Why is it apparent in your decision making that players do not come first, that players come last after everyone is sorted? Then we're like, oh, we have to also sort these guys. Let's give them the crumbs that have remained. You go into an ambulance after game day. Maybe you're injured. They don't even have the tape that is required. Why? Because maybe the person in charge didn't paid probably half price for the ambulance so that it would just come.
Ruben, you were playing rugby not so long ago. I want you to take on from right where he has left off, because I have a special question for him afterwards.
Well, like I said earlier on, medical is a very sensitive issue for me, because I know the challenges of a player that gets in a situation and they cannot be able to help themselves. I was fortunate enough to have injuries and have a team that at least cared enough to contribute, but still, I also had to foot a lot of my bills when it came to that situation. So I do understand, and we have had so many stories over and over again from various times that players have, from what used to be $100 game allowance to 100,000, and not being sure about their medical. Some of the top players on the national team getting injured and having to have their parents cover that bill. Most notably, current Pirates coach, he lost a very gem of a player in such funny scenarios where the whole country cannot take care of its player and the parent has to do so. That's just a shame. I mean, if we can't handle the bare minimums, and I understand when it comes to budgets and negotiation, but then we ask ourselves, are we focusing on promoting the product or promoting the sponsor? I appreciate Nile Special for everything it does, but honestly, once you come into a brand, the product is number one. Then you can think about all the other stakeholders. Because without a good product, you will not have anything to market. Without these players, you will not have anything to market. But then it also goes back to one thing that I have always echoed, that we are so quick to point fingers to, or the union did this, or Nile Special this, or TBWA did this, or TB Holdings did this. What are the players doing to empower themselves? What are the players doing to also fight for their own rights? How will people like us seated in these seats talking about these conversations make sense if those guys themselves are not going to fight for each other? And then they will come in the bars, in the stands, wherever they find us, and whisper in our ears. Can't they fight for themselves? Are they too scared? Yes, and that we appreciate him for that. But you see, we also understand the sacrifice he has put himself in to be in the limelight, to be the face of that, because it puts you in a particular position, which actually I wanted to ask Rujjumba about, that how he adjusts, or how he basically handles the fact that once you speak once, twice, or thrice, to a certain extent, you're taken like a rebel. You're taken like an outcast in the system that just doesn't want to see it prosper. or someone that just likes attention. We've seen that happen with Zeno Wara. We've seen that happen now. We're seeing it happen with Rujjumba. I've had so many conversations where guys are like, okay, now this is now like a broken record. Yeah. So I don't know how he handles that, and I don't know why we cannot have players also. He has been courageous enough to stand up. Are there any unions that are being formed to, like, players unions, to be able to speak about players' problems, players' challenges? What's happening there? That you know that yes, this is a collective union, but this is our representative. If they are so scared to all be up, they can say this is our group, but let's say Edwin is our spokesperson.
This one.
That one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and then have him speak. And also the fact that if they make decisions, that these decisions should be implemented across the board, or at least, let's say, because you can never really have a full unity. Let's say 85% of the board. But even we had, I always say that it's grapevine, because these things we hear, just some of us who have never been in national team setting. But you find that players are complaining about their money, players are complaining about this. But when they choose to take a stand, then some break off. And then they make you look silly. So how, and you see, sometimes I also think it's not Nile Special's problem. It is the gap, the bridge between Nile Special and the product. There's people in between that are managing.
That's exactly what I'm trying to say.
Like, how are we? Do we have a round table where players can talk, stakeholders can talk, the union can talk, the sponsor can talk? Why is it that we have, for the clubs themselves, we are having, we talk so much about the grander picture, but there's also the clubs themselves. Why do we have poor sponsorship retention for clubs? We will not be complaining about this bigger picture if clubs are independent enough to hold their own and then be able to demand what they want from the union.
For the issue of clubs, yeah, you see, rugby, in as much as it has been around for a while, it is still a small sport.
True.
The fan base is growing at a very high rate, thanks a lot to the Sevens team and what they've been doing all around, and to the efforts of some different individuals deep in the villages pushing rugby. I know a number in the east, in the west. But you see, when a sport is young, then the onus of getting sponsors on board doesn't fall only to the clubs. It falls also on the union. You see, the thing is, if the union was funding these clubs well enough from the large budget that it has, and believe me, it's a lot. World Rugby sends them money, National Council of Sports sends them money, Nile Special sends them money. There's so much money coming in, yet so very little accountability. So their onus is to grow these teams, so that these teams are old enough, mature enough, big enough to get sponsors. Right now, how many teams are sponsored right now in the league?
I think 3.
Which one?
3 teams.
Plascon,
name sponsors?
Toyota, and Platinum Credit, and then maybe Stanbic Bank.
Still a sponsor for the Buffaloes.
They are.
They still are.
They are.
So you have roughly 4.
4 sponsors in a league that has 10 teams,
Plus,
not even counting.
Giordano for Makere MPs.
Yeah, Giordano as well.
It's a kid sponsor.
Sponsor.
It's a kid sponsor. Full board sponsorship.
Then it's just Buffaloes,
Buffaloes,
Pirates,
Mongas,
and Mongas.
Pirates,
Yeah.
and then maybe Heathens as well.
Heathens are their full sponsor.
It's not a full sponsor.
That award show was for nothing.
Let me say the calorie.
Well, other questions we'll answer in the next podcast. Isaac, this man's not tracking us. Let's go forward.
So what I'm saying is, it is their role, first and foremost, yeah, to grow rugby to a point whereby you're not going to give birth to a child and then you expect him to instantly start jogging. You take care of the child until he reaches a point where, and that taking care by the union involves making sure this money that they get somehow reaches down to these clubs that are going to do the actual work. And yet this is where it gets funny. The union gets money, 2021's budget, it was supposed to be 10 million a team. Yeah? Then they will put terms and conditions that before you get this money, you need to install this, you need to put this, you need to install cameras, you need to put sponsors patches on your sleeves, you need to do this on your pitch, you need to have this, and all this costs money. These are clubs whereby fans are contributing. Yeah, the owners of the clubs are contributing money to keep the club afloat. Holding a club in your hands for just 1 week is a very costly thing. You have to pay players transport, at least basic minimum. Yeah, transport allowances. You have to put some food, porridge, whatever it is there after the game. Yeah, so it's a costly thing, and now you're putting a heavier burden on them, requiring them to fulfill some extremely high standards before they receive the money that they are owed. Do you see? And when a club fails to fulfill this because maybe they didn't have enough money, they are told that, you know what, you're not going to get this money. How do you expect this club to grow itself to a point where it can attract a sponsor?
But I think that...
Me, I'll just come in and say, look, I think let's like be devil's advocate today and say I speak for the union unofficially. You see, I would say there are particular clubs, I'll not mention, but there are clubs that really do not have the structures you would say particularly that the union wants. Me, if I was speaking on the other side, I would say that these conditions are more like kind of, you know, like a kanyewa, that pass and then you get tackled. It's like a kanyewa to connect you to a sponsor, say the least. But the aspect of it being draconian, saying that you get the money after you have achieved, is a totally different issue. But that aside, I still think the aspects that they intend to bring on board, like, I mean, having audited accounts, having minutes, I mean, those are things that even when a sponsor comes, forget the union's money and the sponsor comes, they want to see. You see what I mean?
No,
so,
see,
yeah.
Rujjumba mentioned something about the game being young.
Yes.
And the union not actually taking care of their young ones, the clubs. So if my mother, my father isn't going to be here to guide me on how to grow in a certain path.
Yeah.
How am I expected to actually grow if my mother and father aren't putting in the efforts to help me grow to get there?
Okay, then here what I would say is that maybe there could be a change in strategy. The aspect of the 10 million being pegged to those performance indicators perhaps should change. What they should do is I would recommend that they make it more of a bonus. Like if you meet and you tick all these obligations, in addition to the money we'll give you, let's say for example, you put the 10 million as a performance bonus for ticking those the KYCs or KPIs that they have asked you to perform. The badge, the footage, the social media and whatever, you get an extra budget, extra amount of money. And then maybe these particular running costs of the club, they not leaving me alone as a child, as you said, perhaps that's something that the union should consider facilitating. But then these KPIs they want, the social media, the hashtags, the social media posts per week, the number of fans, the followers, should be more of like saying that if you have 10 out of 10, you get a success fee of 10 million or something like that.
Yeah.
Yes. So if you want to do it that way, because based on what he's saying is like ideally that if a club does not meet that
even one standard,
zero money. Now it begs the question.
Is that true?
I mean, cut down on the money. The clubs that receive
cut down
3
on
to
the
5
money.
million. You get?
But what I want to understand, maybe from my point of view, is I understand there are certain KPIs you're supposed to meet. Does that mean if you don't meet, let's say, by some weird reason, you don't meet all those KPIs, you get 0 shillings?
That I'm not sure of.
Because by virtue of being an elite in the elite league and being able to, let's say, honor all your games, let's say you should be able to get 5 million. Then let's say, okay, that extra 5 is now that idea that you're bringing up, that these are the bonuses. Okay, now your social media is on point, your communications are on point. That extra 1 million, like that.
But it still begs the question: that money that is not allocated, where does it go? Because when you go online, if you Google right now, World Rugby book accountability or something, yeah, you will see line by line, 2020, 2019. You get books of accounts online. You see,
it's supposed to be openly accessible
for every single coin that they receive, there is accountability. And yet for us, in order to get accountability, I have to travel from Ginger to tennis ground, tennis oval. Yeah? Why? Why like accountability should be easily and readily accessible. If they themselves are to be marketable as rugby union, their accountability should be readily accessible.
That's true.
Do you see? Why are they holding us as clubs? Yeah? Why are they holding us at gunpoint for all these KPIs if even they themselves cannot meet that single KPI?
Which KPIs in the union met?
Right? Sorry?
Which KPIs in the union met?
Of making accountability easily accessible.
So you want their books of account readily accessible?
Very readily accessible, because I mean, I'm a stakeholder as a player. You're a stakeholder as a fan.
Okay.
He's a stakeholder as an ex-player and as a fan. Yeah? And he's a stakeholder as a rich guy.
You see what your belly is doing.
You see,
if I'm beaten in the corners, I'll notice you will set me up. But I know we can stay on this topic forever. But one thing I know is we'll have you back here sometime for a second and third opinion set or something. But before we end this, Edwin, I know we've interacted in a few spots here and there about some deal that the union was about to get that has fluctuating years, and I know you have a few things to share about those fluctuating years of some things being for 2 years and then 3 years and 4 years, you know.
Yeah,
because I know he Rujjumba talked about it so much in that piece, and why this gap, why there are gaps in these durations.
Yeah, I mean, as a sponsor, I think they kind of evaluated where most of their money should go, where most of the growth of their game alongside their brand will feature highly. That's why I think you'll see aspects of like the rugby league will get sponsorship for nearly like 4 years, and then Rugby Africa Sevens will get maybe like 2 years, and Uganda Cup will get also what it gets. So
as let's say our union and you are my legal officer.
Yes.
Would you tell me to sign that deal, given the fact that when one portion of this deal expires, a certain product X will be open, while another product is still enjoying sponsorship?
Well, it depends on the nature of the agreement, but what you would say is that in the circumstances, you would look at the bigger picture. How do you want the game to be grown alongside the brand? Now, as the guys who are pushing the game, that is Uganda Rugby Union, it kind of opens particular doors to have other sponsors come on board, where you, even if you're to have a negotiation, you would necessarily explain to people that, look, Nile is here for this particular time, and maybe after some particular time you could come on board as a sponsor. So it leaves room, not necessarily saying that you have locked in for a whole. Remember, like when we had Ramsey here, Ramsey said that it's a wrong perception to say that Now Special has locked out everyone. Yeah, he said it. So it leaves room for different sponsors as they feel they need to come on and jump on. For example, like I think one of the sponsorship things is that I think for the rugby league, you're called title sponsor. Yeah, so it's called the Nile Special Super Rugby League or something like that. Yeah. So I don't think it will do away with the facts of maybe bring on other sponsors. And maybe it comes back to one of the issues I wanted to ask him about. He raised something which is about the beer companies. Now, me, if I were someone in Nile, honestly, I wouldn't want my competitor having access to the teams.
That is
Because
makes sense.
my goal is to sell my brand and not conflict necessarily with any. Even if they are coming on and they have soft drinks, but it's another beer brand, I would still not be comfortable.
But we have instances where some of these beer brands actually have agreements with these clubs already before now, especially came into the sponsorship. I know of a club that actually has a grown sponsorship with another beer company.
Yeah.
So how do you go around that?
Well, for that particular aspect, one of the things I think, if you have these agreements, is that the union will be in a position that it has to have its affiliates, its agents, its members not sign up with these particular rival companies, to say the least.
But
So
it was there before this new deal.
well, now it comes down to what the agreement says in terms of where there is a breach. See what I mean? It now comes down to aspects of breach. If it's a breach that can be rectified, it's not really fundamental to the agreement. It's something that can be rectified. Whether it is something that the union is willing to interfere with and do is something totally different, because these agreements are signed not with clubs. The clubs can only follow what the union has told them. So if some of the agreements say that you cannot have rival sponsors in the same industry, to restrict that aspect of competition, so that you can have unfettered competition in your business, that's something that can be looked at the union level, but not necessarily a club. You can't blame a club unless the club was in the know of such information.
We can go on and speak about this for another hour, but I've got an interesting email that is summoning Isaac back to Stone City. But before I let Isaac go, I know over the weekend is going to be in Aroa. We're having the third edition of the Sevens this year, and at the beginning, when we were told that the Sevens national team boys won't be participating, but like, hey, it's going to open up a bit. There won't be the duopoly between Pirates and Cobs. But like we've seen, Pirates aren't just going away so easy. Cobs probably they're having issues to deal with, but Pirates aren't going away just easy, right? And then after Sevens, we saw Entebbe Sevens. Chisano became a problem. Before we know it, Heathens were winners. So Isaac, I read this morning somewhere where it said it's now between Heathens and Pirates. Where do we see Hippos coming? Because Hippos have been the near side. They're almost getting there. They're almost there. But and right now it looks as open as it can be for Hippos. So where do we hope to see your team perform better this weekend in Arua?
As a team,
you can even be
we
by
are
Simon. You play
the
for
most unpredictable in a positive way of things. No one expected us to reach the final this last weekend in Entebbe.
I am the one who
Considering-
said that Ginger Hippos.
Edwin
I actually said
Edwin
my
put you in
fourth
the
team. I
finals.
said Ginger Hippos. I threw them in there.
Edwin put you guys in the finals.
Yes.
But as a team, we have put in the work.
Let it go.
We have put in the work. We have put in our work hours, and we continue to put in the work hours. We have very young boys who are passionate about the sport. Some of them just fresh out of high school, others fresh out of campus, others on campus. But these are boys who have played together for a long time. And the good thing is, the thief that gets you properly is the one that you don't see coming.
Are you speaking about Impis and Walupa versus Cobs?
Exactly.
But like Hippos has really been around, because I think the question that many rugby fans have is, we got to know about Hippos and to fall in love with Hippos' style of
Their
play.
style, yeah. expansive
from the way they introduce themselves through sevens. And surely by now, what we thought, of course, there's a difference between thoughts and expectations and reality.
What happens on the pitch?
But by now, at least thought there would be at least one circuit that the Hippos have won. The Hippos haven't won a circuit
In their defense, Heathens have just won their first circuit in God knows how many years.
Heathens won, I think that was 2018, 2017. We had to do our homework because of one of our avid followers that came to Heathens complaint, I should say, saying you guys, you're not giving the right information, and we just had to correct him that we were talking about Heathens at Entebbe, which was 2013. But anyway, yeah, speaking about the same thing, Hippos, we got to know about Hippos even before they came into the 15th fold. They were a 7th side, very, very beautiful brand of rugby. How come that up to this point we are knocking, but the door is not opening?
Oh, but the door has opened.
Has it?
The door has opened. You only need to see properly to notice that in the past 2 circuits, we've only had one big team in the final, not 2 big teams, which has not happened in a long time.
Very true.
The first circuit, it was Impis. When did Impis last reach a 7s final?
When did Impis last make it to top 8?
To top 8. Do you get?
It had been a while.
The last circuit, it was Hippos.
Final.
Right?
On the final, then Hippos.
So there is progress, and what makes me happy is seeing the teams that haven't ever won or haven't been winning in a while, yeah, making it back up there to the podium. It shows that there's growth. It shows that teams are actually putting in the effort, yeah. So hopefully by the 3rd circuit, the one in Arua, we won't have any big team in the final.
Does it also question the depth of the big teams to a certain extent?
I actually believe it does. It does because it shows some kind of reliance.
Yes.
It shows some kind of reliance on a few cogs, and if you just take those few out, there won't be any performance.
And also, doesn't that pose a question for the rest of let's say the other 7 or the other number of teams? Are they also working on their depth in the event that they also have players called upon? I think this is something that in general teams need to look at.
That's very true.
You see, that is why the union wants you to have a second team to get.
And I support the union there.
Why don't they give you the 10 million?
And then you make the team.
You make the team because now you can fund
You
the
don't
team.
give for transport money before they arrive.
Yes.
You give the transport money.
took our
You give the transport money when you have arrived.
Whoever is the editor, please make sure you get that quote up. Don't give a Ghana transport money.
Whoever did not
If the union
arrive
gives clubs
after
money,
Edwin had
guys
sent
will
transport
just
money. What is
guys will not allow. Guys will not. They will say, tomorrow we're making
rain
a
at
team.
my home?
You can't.
Edwin, you are our resident oracle, resident octopus. What is happening in Arua? Top 4 teams?
Top 4 teams. Arua. Obviously, Heathens will be there. We'll have to give them the chance to defend themselves, depending on how they finish that group pool A, because they are with Pirates. Yeah. They will give them a fair shot at the cherry. Pirates is hard done. They are going to come with the tournament money in their hands. Ready? They know that they were silent, so they usually respond when they have been when they have been badly beaten. So we expect Pirates to put up a show there. Third team, let me see. I'll throw in
advise you to throw in
Hippos.
because Rujjumba has been looking at you weird.
Have a pen.
I'll throw in Hippos. Why? I think of the 2 teams, Hippos has most of their core players intact. I don't know if there are injuries in their camp, but core players intact. And also depending on how you travel, I don't know when you're traveling, but I think travel is going to be very key because you have to go Ginger all the way Kampala, then that Bombo traffic all the way to Arua, and then you need to recover and then start immediately. So Ginger will obviously have a say in this as well. Now here, Cobbs Impis. Cobbs depending their injury list. I don't know if most of the players who missed out on Entebbe and Wakiso are back. Depending on that, they may have a shot as well. Impis, most of their players are still in. So for Raymond's sake, another fat cut, I'll say Impis and throw out Cobbs.
Ruben, you're going to close this one for us. Who are your top 4 teams for Arua?
The beautiful thing or the tricky thing about sevens is the way you perform in the previous circuit can almost dictate the next circuit for you. And seeing how the Entebbe sevens were set up and how they are being set up again for Arua, the groups don't seem to have major changes. So I really expect to see the Heathens there. I really expect to see the Hippos there. I really expect Pirates this time to be on time and find themselves in the semis as well. Not give away easy things, and hopefully one of their most important players, Arnold Atukunda, is fit. Hopefully he's not still...
He has been running around here, I think.
Yeah, nicknamed Safe Border.
He's already started jogging to Arua.
So he's jogging to Arua probably.
He should be Nakasongola by now.
There should be a 4th team that's going to surprise us.
So you're looking for a surprise? Rams?
It could be Rams. Rams is also one of those teams that in sevens shows that it has so much potential, but always also has that way it breaks your heart, breaks your spirit. It has an Arsenal kind of thing on it.
An Arsenal vibe.
Yeah, the Arsenal vibe. But I think I'd give that 4th slot to the Buffaloes. I don't know how, but let us see. I may be wrong according to allocation. But the Heathens will definitely be there because they look the most organized at the moment. The team looks to have the right balance of the skills and the brute and how it's gelling well. Hippos is a team that is really close to them, and I expect to see a lot more from Hippos. So hopefully they will also turn up, and I will really be happy to see them win their first circuit. So my money is on Hippos, and not just because Rujjumba is here, but I really want to see diversity in how clubs are all hungry. We are tired of clubs that are coming to the table thinking that, okay, I'm just coming to participate. Can everyone compete to win? And that is how I'm choosing to look at it, and I'm putting my money on the Hippos for this time.
You guys are clashing 3. Then he had Impis or Cobbs.
Impis. He removed Cobbs because of Raymond.
And I think Red. He chose Impis ahead of Cobbs, and you've gone with Buffaloes. The reason we are fat cats is because we always want to eat on time, and I've been told that we've been summoned at BNB. So thank you for listening to us today, and thank you for watching the podcast. Remember to leave comments and likes and share everything we send you. Subscribe to our channel to always get notifications of these videos. Follow us on social media and always get the updates when they're coming in. Thank you, Ruben, for being here. As always, thank you, Edwin, for being here. And Isaac for making the journey from Sun City. I know I'll be calling you again very soon, but thank you for joining us today. And as a Fat Cats, we sign out. We're going to eat.
Thank you for having me.